Hi, disclaimer before we start. I'm having a bad day. I've got insomnia. I've had hardly any sleep. I received not one but two bits of bad news today. I realised that the wall in my bathroom is burned because I've just constantly had a pumpkin spice candle burning there for days, and I didn't realise that black smoke was going to stain my wall. This whole video is entirely running on sleep deprivation and copious amounts of caffeine, and also I might be a little bit tetchy. Dark bleatings, everybody. I have not a new, but like a different kind of video for you today. Now, I normally like to make book content, and I normally like to try and keep everything really positive and happy, and I prefer to talk about things that I really like, but unfortunately something in the horror community has really triggered me, and that's kind of saying something because sorry, I'm feeling a little sick. That's kind of unusual for me because I don't have any triggers per se. Like there isn't a lot of stuff that really like sets me off. I can, my general attitude to most things is like but people keep asking me if, and I do feel like I have a moral obligation to address this because it's a nature it's a topic of great importance. People keep asking me if I'm going to see Alien Romulus, or what did I think of Alien Romulus, and people keep asking me this because my favourite films of all time are Alien and Aliens, kind of equally, like they're always vying for first place, but I just basically think they're perfect horror films, perfect horror movie monster, perfect characters, perfect script, perfect settings, perfect sound design, perfect special effects, oh, amazing practical effects. So I might be a little bit too attached to them. Now, for a quick overview, I'm not a huge fan of Alien 3 and 4, but I don't think that they ruined anything about the original two films. They're just not great follow-ons to me, but there is artistic integrity and intent there, like the directors had vision. They were trying to do something a bit different while keeping everything in universe and true to the characters and blah 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 blah. So while I don't really like 3 and 4, I don't have major problems with them. Prometheus I did not like. I really didn't like it, but I didn't feel so strongly about it that that the mere mention of it bothers me. The reason that I'm not going to see Alien Romulus is because of Alien Covenant, because Alien Covenant exists, and I can already feel the red mist descending, but I am going to try and get through my thoughts on this in a measured and calm and fair way. Now, before I go into my thoughts and why this has deterred me from watching anything in the franchise ever again, and I really mean that, I am not watching it, I have to say this: it is a lot easier to criticize something that already exists than it is to create it. It's much easier to poke holes. Well, actually, I'm not poking holes rather than just seeing the glaring holes, but it is a lot easier to like rip something apart than it is to write it, create it, and produce it in the first place. I mean, not that I'm planning to sit here and just rip it apart. I'd like to think I have some balanced thoughts. Also, in the past, I have said that this film is completely irredeemable, and I feel like actually that was a little unfair. Maybe that was a little immature of me to say because I was so emotional about it. It's not irredeemable. There are lots of good things about it, lots of people worked really hard on it. I'm sure that people felt really passionately about what they were making. So despite my criticisms or anyone else's criticisms, I do acknowledge that people worked really hard to bring that film about, and the cast is really great. For example, like the acting's really good, the sets were there, the effects, the special, there were effects, the acting was good. So I just want to address my thoughts on Alien Covenant and why it makes me feel this way. I'm sure you could probably already hear it. My voice is, I feel my throat's tightening up as I think about it. I just wanted to purge my thoughts on this one last time and then never talk about it again, because clearly Alien Romulus being released has stirred something up in me, something that I thought was long dead and buried, something I thought that I'd, with a more mature and calm head, I thought I'd overcome these feelings, but I can feel the anger swelling in me. I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds. this isn't going to be in any sort of cohesive order. This isn't going to be like a rundown of the entire film or anything like that. This is a stream of consciousness, if you will. And please oblige me, or don't oblige me. Maybe you love this film and you don't want to hear this, the unhinged ramblings. I mean, a measured review. So basically an overview of this film, and you'll have to forgive me, I probably will get a couple things wrong because I've only seen it once and I saw it when it was released, whenever that was, a few years ago, and as you know, I have a memory like a sieve, which goes to show the amount of things I remember about this must have really, you know, burrowed into my psyche for some reason. Firstly, before anyone says, oh, you shouldn't compare, it's a new film, whatever, I absolutely can compare because this is a reboot, okay? From Prometheus onwards, this is a reboot of the franchise. And Alien Covenant was made by Ridley Scott, who gave us the original Alien film, and for that, I will always consider him the godfather. He's produced my favourite thing of all time in all of the creative arts and storytelling. He's the guy, so I love him still, but the fact that this is the same guy that gave us Alien Covenant is crazy to me. It takes great pains to remind us that it is of this universe, that this is the guy that did Alien. They fade in the title sequence exactly the same way they do with Alien, with the same or even similar soundtrack or whatever. And it keeps reminding us, which is, so you can't get away from it. So I can't, you know, and it's a deep space crew in space coming across the xenomorph threat, so it's of course you're going to compare. So the first thing that wound me up a little bit is how ham-fisted the theme is flung in your face the second the film opens, on a set that looks like Apple designed it, which is very odd and jarring for this kind of universe because it's all set in the future, but it's not set in a future where every single thing is stripped of personality and devoid of humanity. It's very weird. And we're introduced to David, the android from Prometheus, I think, if I recall, and there's a statue of David and he's talking to his creator about the act of creation, and Wayland's the creator. And sorry about the weird gap, but of course my phone's storage filled up as I was talking about that. So yeah, obviously the theme of the whole film is creation, and I just couldn't stand how ham-fisted it was. It was so unsubtle and so expositional, really, thematically, and it bothered me because in the originals, or in most great films, it's like fed to you. You infer the theme yourself. This is something you're supposed to realize as you go along. It's part of the enjoyment, the viewing experience. Like the original Alien, there are so many themes in there, and it's all open to interpretation. You can take from it what you want, like the very nature of the xenomorph itself and its birth and life cycle. You've got body horror, you've got loss of bodily autonomy, you've got pregnancy horror in there, you've got parasites. There's a lot going on that you can draw out, and that's what makes those films so rewatchable. There's something new to notice and ruminate on every time if you're like me and that's, you know, a hobby of yours. And with this, we're just told in the opening scenes, oh, this is about creation, and David is interested in creation, so that's what it's about. And then we move on to our crew that we're supposed to like and care about, and we open on the ship, and there's an identical android called Walter, also played by Michael Fassbender, who's great. Something happens with the ship. They're all in cryosleep, they're all awoken, there's a disaster. The captain, or whoever, played by James Franco very weirdly, is trapped in his cryo chamber, and he's going to burn to death if they can't get him out. And his partner, fiance or whatever, Daniels, who's our main protagonist, she's like flinging herself around, hysterically screaming and crying, throwing herself on top of the cryo chamber, actually hindering the attempt to get him out of there. And I couldn't help but think Ripley would have got him out the cryo chamber, or she would have made logical steps to try and get him out the cryo chamber. And I could have forgiven that. Like, I could have gone to an empathetic place in my mind where, like, if this was me and my husband, maybe I'd have a complete breakdown and I'd lose all rationale, because, you know, it's very emotional if the person you love is in peril this way. But it's every woman woman in this film is like this in the face of any danger or problem, screaming hysterical, irrational messes, even when their jobs call for them to have more rational thinking, and presumably that's why they're in these fields. The medical officer, when presented with a medical emergency, is a hysterical screeching mess. Everyone, like, and I'm not someone who gets sensitive about this. I accept that the way that women are written in film, it is not very representative of the gender as a whole typically, and that's something I can just move on and accept most of the time. But in this franchise, it feels like a particular punch to the face, because this is the franchise that gave us Ripley, which retroactively annoys me because Ripley wasn't originally written as a female. Ripley was supposed to be played by a man. Sigourney Weaver wanted that part and lobbied for that part and got it, which is, you know, and gave us one of the greatest protagonists of all time. But I think that considering that what's followed, the female characters that have followed have been written as female parts, and the difference is so stark in how they approach emergencies and disasters. It's just really disappointing to me that 50 years later this is still where we are in a franchise like this. Ripley's the go-to great strong female protagonist that everybody names when we're trying to think of great horror protagonists or great female protagonists anyway. So, you know, in one way, yes, Ripley is the greatest protagonist of all time to me, but also in 50 odd years it is sad that there isn't a more recent go-to example that people tend to think of. And this, you know, Daniels really highlights that for me because of the surrounding women in the film. Okay, things that other comparisons that kind of bugged me. So David is all about creation, and it's revealed that he's instrumental in creating the xenomorph, and we'll get to that in a little bit about how it's retroactively also ruined the genesis of the xenomorph. But David values xenomorph life above human life and above the lives of his crew. Remind you of anyone? That's just Ash all over again, isn't it? But in a more ham-fisted, abstract way. Like Ash, like, it was a surprise that he even was an android because he blended so well with the crew. Like, that was a shock. That was like a revelation. And the fact that he's betraying them all and everything, and his thing is like secure the foreign alien thing, take it back to Earth and everything, and then Dave is just waltzing around saying weird things like I'll do the fingering and acting like an android, not like a person. He's very androidy, and it's just odd because Ash and Bishop were very people-y androids, and bizarre. We have Captain Oram on this ship, who is religious. Everyone else is a bit of a skeptic, but he's a man of science and religion, and it's the main character point of his is that he has faith and he believes, and he's a believer in creation. So I assumed that what they were going to do with that is that though Oram is a lovely man, he seems a very nice dude and trustworthy and everything, I thought that at some point he was going to align himself with David, because I thought that would make an interesting antagonist. Like like, you think that David is posed as the main antagonist, but actually it's going to turn out to be Oram that forsakes them all, because, you know, he aligns himself because this android has more in common with him about his belief structure and everything. But then it just doesn't go anywhere, so it's completely irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the entire story that Oram is like this. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, I guess we'll talk about the genesis of the alien then. So sequels that I don't like but that don't make me angry are sequels that are just like capitalizing on the franchise. They're just making their money. They're just churning out these sequels and reboots and whatever. I cannot stand it though when someone comes back to a franchise and they retroactively ruin something that the whole franchise hinges on. And it's the xenomorph. So to me, the xenomorph is like the perfect killing machine. I mean, it's designed that way originally speaking, so it's the shark of space. It's a natural born predator. It's evolved perfectly. It's an absolute killing machine. Its reproductive cycle is really interesting. You know, you got the alien eggs, and then the face huggers burst out and they impregnate the host, and then the thing bursts out like in the most horrible bloody violent birth you've ever seen, and then the thing grows at a rapid rate and kills everyone you love. And it's so interesting. They crawl on walls, they can move around in water, they're really fast, you've got to shoot them like a 1,000 times to take them down. They've got acid for blood, they've got extra mouths inside their mouths, and they've got nasty little grabby hands and tails that stab you, and they're so sleek and scary looking. They don't even have eyes from what you can see, and good sense of smell, and they're crafty as well. Like, they learn human patterns, and they work together like a pack to take you down, or they're also terrifying on their own. Like, these are the greatest monsters that have ever been committed to film. And then Alien Covenant decides, oh no, actually no, they were genetically modified and created and grown, and yeah, they were just made, and it does not add to the mystique. It ruins it. It just obliterates like the theme from the original, that like nature is the overwhelming force, and like this is just, you know, puny humans pitted against something that thankfully isn't on Earth, like, but this is kind of the thing that could take down the entire universe if they travel far enough. Like, it just ruins it. Like, it trashes that theme from the original films of sort of like natural progression and evolution, and like you know, natural problem solving, and it condenses it to just this overly convoluted, contrived, plot holey, by the way, like system of just making something in a lab, essentially. Like, not quite a lab, it's a cave and it's the engineers and all this, but it's so unnecessarily convoluted between Prometheus and Covenant, because they're both saying like different but similar things, but that actually like wreck each. I don't know, it's the mythos, it's all over the place. It also ruins the timeline. I know that Alien vs Predator isn't considered canon, but they didn't say that when it was first released. They retroactively said, oh, it's not canon, by the way, when they were making these new films, just so that they could ignore the timeline established in Alien vs Predator, which, by the way, gave us a better female protagonist than Prometheus or Alien Covenant did, even though that was supposed to just be a fun monster on monster flick. The ruin, like, going back and just changing the meaning of life and evolution and the origin of the xenomorph, which like didn't need to be stated because it was way scarier the way it was, like that, like that's kind of like an unforgivable cinema sin to me for these reboots, and Covenant especially. It makes me very upset. And also, okay, let's get into the Tekken fight between the androids. So Walter and David, David's evil, Walter's good. There's been some murder, plenty, and whatever. They're identical. Who can tell them apart, you guys? And then, you know, in the end sequence, in the third act, the crew have got to get back to the ship. There's some sort of timer, if I recall. I can't quite remember where it is. They got to get off this planet. They got to get out of here. And Walter hangs back to try and take down David, because David is stopping them. And they have this huge fight that's quite like if Brian fought himself in Tekken. It's like Brian versus Brian with the punch. And they have this crazy fight. And at some point, Walter gets scratched on the face. And then we don't see who wins the fight. And so clearly my mind goes, well, David won the fight, because there would be no reason to not let us see that otherwise. But then when Walter gets back to the ship with the crew, he's got this scratch on his face that Walter had during the fight. And what really winds me up about that is that none of the crew saw Walter get scratched in the first place, which means that the only reason that David has that scratch is to throw off the audience. It doesn't make any in-story sense at all. And what pisses me off, so like Walter's lost a hand, the crew saw that, so it makes sense that David would cut his hand off when he goes back, but the scratch thing is entirely for the viewer benefit, and that kind of stuff is insulting to audiences, because they obviously thought that we wouldn't notice that the crew hadn't seen it. And it's so easily avoidable. You can write yourself out of that straight away, like as in when the fight starts, the crew turns back and sees Walter get slashed in the face. That would have solved that problem, but no. And what really bugs me about inconsistencies and stupid plot contrivance and like exposition like that for the sake of throwing off the audience is what does annoy me about it. I'm so annoyed I can't even remember why it annoys me. Oh yeah, it's because of the quality control. So indie films get slated for like poor production value, or you know, maybe the acting's a bit ropey, but usually indie films are made by a handful of people with no money that pumping their own money into a project because they believe in it and they're trying to create something, and so maybe the overall product isn't great because it doesn't have Hollywood money behind it or Hollywood expertise behind it. But it's their passion projects, which is why I won't sit here slating indie films even if I think they're terrible, because I know that the group of people who made it are not like strictly professionals in that sense a lot of the time, like not to the level that Hollywood recruits people. So, and I know that their hearts went into the thing that they've made, whereas a Hollywood budget and a Hollywood production values, the quality control should be higher. It bothers me so much that somebody wrote that into the script, which in that first instance I can forgive that, because people write stuff all the time without realizing it's an issue. Like I redraft stories like 1,000 times, but inevitably there's always going to be mistakes, and I have them pointed out to me sometimes in critiques from readers. But in this case, this went through script writers, script editors, directors, the cast read it, the makeup department got involved in this one, guys. The special effects department would have had the whatever they call it for the notes for the day. So you're telling me that at no point no one involved in the production went, hang on a minute, why would David scratch his face? Or if they did, it was completely ignored. Like that, oh, that kind of, I don't know why that bugs me so much, but I just feel like it's insulting as an audience member, and it's lazy, and it's weird. Like, why would you do this? And then we get to the end battle, right? The ship's taking off, the pilot's just flying them into the air, and Daniels is now fighting the last xenomorph that's after them on the roof of the ship. So she's outside of the ship, and so she's battling the alien, which can grip on very easily, much more easily than her, and she's in motion and they're going high in the air, so obviously high stakes. She's not inside, she's not sheltered by the shell of the ship. She could fall off the edge and just plunge to her death from a great height. The alien could kill her. There's like 1,000 things going on for her. But what I just don't get, and this is just another thing that's for audience benefit to make us all go, ooh, how exciting. It would have been exciting enough as it was if you liked this film. But the pilot's flying the ship as if the xenomorph is in the cockpit with him. He's all over the place. The ship's like lunging from side to side. It doesn't make any logical sense. It's like in films and TV shows where someone's driving down a road that's completely clear, and then they see something, and instead of braking they throw their car off the road entirely, or they crash into a tree for no reason. Like it's insane. And this is even more insane because we're like in open air here. There's no reason for the ship to be all over the place. Like it's the pilot wasn't fighting the thing. And it's not just those major things, it's all little things. Like there's a death in a cave, they're in a caving system. They've established to us, the audience, that everyone's in close quarters here, so if there's danger in one chamber of this cave, there's danger for all of them because they're all really close. And then someone gets killed in the cave, they do this huge tracking shot backwards down the thing, like as she screams, to let us know how loud and long and far reaching the scream is, but no one hears her. No one hears her. No one knows where she's gone. This would have ricocheted off the walls of the cave. Everyone would have heard it. Don't know why that stuck in my mind, but it has. It's something I've remembered all this time. Why did David say, I'll do the fingering? Why are the locations so confusing? At the end of Prometheus, I think they're on a moon or a planet or something. I can't quite remember now. It's been a while since I saw it. But the ship is like planted a certain way on the set, like it's an angle. You can see it. It's like a thing is framed. And then when we're in Covenant, we get to that, and it seems like the same place and the same ship and everything, but actually they're in completely different places. So why did they visually link us like that to Prometheus when that it looks like we're like going back to where we ended off, but we're not. We're in a different place and it's a different ship. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Also, I'm not even a fan of Prometheus, but Shaw survives the end of Prometheus, and then when we get to Covenant we find out she's dead because David killed her because he was messing around with the genetic studies and everything. And I just, apparently, if you wanted to know that Shaw died and actually see it, you had to watch one of the web shorts. But like, I'm not even a Prometheus fan, but what an absolute insult to a main character to have them just killed like off screen like this. Like, I like and treated with like no gravity whatsoever, really, or like because the characters that are in this film don't know her. So there's some sort of revelation at some point, I recall, but it doesn't matter to anyone. Why, oh why, when they land on the planet, do they all take off their helmets? They realise that the air is breathable. Fine, yes, breathable, but that's the only thing they know about the air. They could be anything. Like it's just an odd choice for people who work in space. Why were they ignoring the quarantine protocols? Like, I can't help but compare this to the original, because in the original, even though Ripley is deeply emotionally connected to her crew, they're like family and everything, she won't let the foreign body aboard. She says no. She's in control of the ship while other people gone or incapacitated, and they want to come on board after the and someone's been facehuggered, and she says no, you can't come on board because that's a foreign life form. We don't know. We're not, and she gets overruled. So it's not Ripley's stupid decision making that causes the problem on board. It's the fact that other stupid people overruled her decision and just went against what she said. But in this case, it's like they don't have quarantine protocols. I'll do the fingering. Oh. And I guess lastly, the theme overall annoyed me, the theme of creation, which they will not stop freaking banging on about this. And it's like just set up in the intro, as I said, like so like just shoved in your face. And ultimately it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, the crew don't do something with creation to like combat the enemy. There's no grand epiphany that happens from this, which means that this theme was just introduced because someone thought it was a cool idea to genetically have to have the xenomorphs genetically modified, which means that they trashed the genesis of the alien for absolutely no reason. There's no thematic reason to do this. So basically what I'm saying is that this film is full of stupid people that make stupid decisions for no reason. It's illogical. It's ridden with plot holes, and not just this film, but it retroactively plot holes the entire franchise. It ruins Xenomorph as the perfect natural monster that is. It's an insult to female protagonists and also to film, and it's all and horror and monsters. The set design and the monster design, the special effects is what I'm trying to say. The effects aren't even as good as they were in 1979 and 1986, so it's like we've gone backwards, so we didn't even get that element of it strictly right. There are things that are too reminiscent of the original, but not in an intentional way, more in like a, oh, this worked the first time, so we're just doing it, like David basically having Ash's motivation, like we've done this, we've treaded this ground, why was that done? Like, Ash wanted to preserve the xenomorph over the crew. David's exactly the same, but less convincing as someone that could blend in. And like, also, oh god, there's a bit where Daniels fights the thing in like a mechanical thing that's basically just meant to replicate, you know, the thing that Ripley, the yellow thing. I'm so mad I can't remember what it's called. The thing with the arms. I hate it. I really hate it. I hate it because of what it's done to the franchise, and it's all retro. Like, nothing can actually ruin Alien and Aliens for me, but if I was invested in this, and I was, clearly I was, because look how mad I am, it would I just don't understand why this has been done. I don't understand why it was done. I don't, money, I guess I do actually understand it. From an artistic standpoint, I don't understand how could you do this? So I'm not going to go and see Alien Romulus.